start by welcoming our pal John Schaefer back from some serious health problems, and we're all thrilled to see you here. So thanks for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
And for Carol to be here right on time. She's cheating her boss a little bit today, so we appreciate it.
I'm cheating the taxpayers.
Cheating the taxpayers.
Don't say that too loud.
Whoa, soundbite.
Eggs.
It's never
That's
been
the truth.
done before. All right, I don't have an agenda, but I have an agenda. So, council, here's what I'm thinking, and tell me if you are not in agreement, but I think this is the way to go. We have 3 or 4 items on the table that we've discussed, and I think we can come to some consensus. And so I want to try to do that to start with and to move forward. And I want to start with compensation. My thought is this, and tell me where I'm wrong if I am. Of course, we don't know where John falls on a couple of these things because he hasn't been here. I know that Noel has asked for a 5% increase for our employees. David and staff had recommended 3%, and Val and Paul had indicated that they would support somewhere between 0 and 1%. I think Carol and Ken and I support the idea of a 3% increase, and so I want to go from there. So I'd like to have, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Everybody too, don't let me be the only one that gets scolded.
And
Use your microphone well.
Mayor, make sure you clarify that increase you're talking about is how much money as the
Okay.
talked about. It's not everybody getting 1. It could be 0, 1, 2, 3.
So whatever we decide, if it is indeed 3%, that pool of money, and I know Noel is understanding now, and hopefully we all are. That pool of money, whatever that is, let's pick a number of $100 that goes to all the employees, whatever our city manager agrees to. So he's going to split up the pool of money. We're going to give him a pool of money that he will decide how it is incorporated. Yeah. Everybody understanding of that? Did I misstate anything? Okay. So the compensation increase has a couple of support. Noel supported a 5% increase. The city staff asked for 3%, and Val and Paul supported about a 1%. I hope I'm not putting words in my mouth, and if I am, let me know. The point is that pool of money, whatever we decide, if it's 3%, 1%, 5%, whatever that pool is, does not mean that everybody at the city gets a 3% raise. What it means is David gets a pool of 3%, and then we'll pay the employees based on
it's just one slide. It just, yeah, just blow it up.
And there
Thank
is,
you.
Suzanne, is something up on this? Okay.
It's, my page 2, at the bottom, we had a chart, the Teller County disparity thing. I just wanted to put this in the record that, I was challenged on the midpoint salary usage, as, inappropriate because the actuals are different. The statement was all the Woodland Park people are below midpoint and all the tellers are above. Not quite true, it's mixed. The actual, I took out the specific ones you objected to and added in 1 or 2 more. But overall, Teller County, Woodland Park is paid 141%. Teller County equivalent positions, equivalent certifications, equivalent experience. And a lot of these are average. I just wanted to put that into the record. And that's all I have to say about it.
Good. Thank you. Anybody else? Any discussion here? If not, I'm gonna kind of some consensus on this. We've talked about it ad nauseam, and I think everybody's got an opinion. So I'll start with me. I'm gonna support a 3% increase. John, you don't know at this point? I hate to lose the first time.
I can do that quickly if you'd like or not. It's up to you. Yeah, this is actual date. It's not.
So I guess with this, let's just talk 3% pool. We'll just take a pool of money, merit increase. David, I'd like to just ask you a question, because our concern is how much individuals would be getting based on their merit. In the last couple of years, what was probably the highest merit increase you gave to an employee? And give us some ideas of that process, because I think a lot of people think that the directors get paid fairly, and that I think the fear is that they're going to get paid a lot more. And my hope is that this goes to the lower end salaries or hourly employees, and not the higher. Can you give us any examples there to help us understand how this process works once you have this pool of money?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Each supervisor does a performance evaluation of an employee, and then other supervisors rate those supervisors, and eventually all those evaluations make it to my desk, and I review them, and I log them in, and I rack and stack them, and I separate it into 3 groups. I separate it into department heads, supervisors, and non-supervisors. And historically, over the years, the non-supervised group has received a greater increase than the supervisors who have received a greater increase than department heads. So within each of those groups, there's a bit of a bell curve. So there are some who get, I think the highest, when one year council allowed for a 4% pool, the highest was, I think, 6.2 or 6.5%. And one employee got that, and then 2 got 6%, and then the bell curve approached that middle, and then there were some that got less than that 4%. And so that was true. Each group generally had its own bell curve, where there were some that were above that average and some that were below that average. Average meaning the pool that was available.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just go ahead and say I agree with 3%. Be happy to move forward.
talked to several council, including yourself, about this issue. My stance relates to this and everything else I'm asking that I can put in the record. I'm not going to beat a dead horse with that, and people can see what they want to see out of this. Which means my real stance is 0%, with the exception of the police and some other, any raise I would like to see go to the lower level people, whatever we come up with, it's 3, 5, 20, 0, whatever. And as you know, I've talked to some people, and just to compromise from my 0 position, split the difference 1.5 is fine. I think that helps me.
Mayor, how this plays into what our next steps is, some of the things we talk about today, Mike will plug into the last iteration of the budget that we bring to the council for the first reading. So if by council reaching that consensus of 3%, we'll be able to validate that number throughout the budget. So that's why if we reach numbers today, then when we present the first reading to you, it can be as accurate as it can be, with the best information that we have.
Thank you. I support security cameras for City Hall, Memorial Park. I would also add cameras to the aquatic center for security reasons.
Yes, Memorial Park right now has just one from the basketball court shining into Memorial Park, but we have been looking at cameras throughout the park. We're still collecting bids for that. At the aquatic center, we have one at the entrance. We have 2 cameras at the reception area. There are 2 cameras in the lap pool, and there are 2 cameras in the leisure pool.
Okay. I appreciate that information because I didn't know you had cameras in the version.
I think she said there's one that's external at the front door.
Those are really good questions, Carol, and I'm going to do the best I can to answer that. But Peak Internet is our camera provider at the Aquatic Center, and they are going to dispatch.
sounds like we have Val?
Just so, my understanding is you're gonna try, your approach is pretty close to budget neutral. Attempting to be budget neutral on this. Thank you. Thanks, Val, yeah, that is good.
They don't cost that much, I mean, in the first place. I mean, just one, you get a 4 cameras, 2 terabyte positions can't be filled, then we should go back and evaluate the salary. I hope that salary survey and staffing survey come sooner than later, because I think we need to address this immediately. I don't think this is something we can sit around and wait for. If you've gone up 9%, I didn't realize that statistically. That's huge. I believe it's going to go up higher. I see a lot of change in this community that is going to require some extra policing. I know that's a blanket statement, and some council members don't like that, but I don't have any details. It's just it's what I'm seeing around town. So I'd like to follow Miles' lead. Definitely unfreeze that position, and then let's wait for these surveys. If the surveys come back, we should address this issue immediately.
Good, and I'm in agreement. And if anyone looked at the results from elections yesterday, specifically in Colorado Springs, their increase in police force is going to increase dramatically, and the city bought into it. And I think we all buy into the fact that we need increased security. I don't think there's any question about that. For you, Chief, I think we would like, as a council, to, and I know you work on this, and I know we're going to try to unfreeze. Let's see what we can do relative to that overtime. Make that a priority this year somehow to try to reduce that as much as we can. I know you all manage that well, but just understand that's a concern of all of ours.
Well, and not to belabor this, but I do like to give my managers some credit. They've dropped our overtime since 2014 by about $92,000. So we were at about $244,000 in 2014. Now we're down around about 140, 150, roughly in that ballpark. So I absolutely agree with you. We are definitely making it a priority. Most of my managers are doing everything they can to drop that number, and we cut it significantly, and we will continue to do everything we can. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great information. Thank you very much. Seems like we have unanimous consensus there. Not a vote, but unanimous concession. Let's do Main Street before special projects. Noel, would you like to start with Main Street? Okay, I will. I know that Main Street is going to do some kind of presentation at some point to council, and as I've said more than one time, I am in support of something on Main Street. I'm not exactly sure what that number is. I would like to see a vision, how we're going to pay for it. I'm thinking a number of around maybe $10,000, and I don't know what that is. I'm not a big proponent, probably the least of anybody here, of Main Street and the value and what they brought to the community over the last 2 years. I know they've worked together. I commend them for that. I'd love to see a vision. I'd love to see what that vision would cost, and then we'll make a further decision come November 16th and December 7th. So I would leave this up to discussion, and so everyone knows my stance. I would like to seriously reduce the commitment. I don't know what that number would be, and we'll go from there. Noel, looks like you're ready to go.
I'm still going to hold on to requesting that we defund Main Street completely. I think they can still go to community investment and request funds if we move majority of that over to community investment. That will allow the other 501Cs to request more money. I still think that Main Street can be viable without our support. They have the ability to go out and get grants. I keep getting told by several of the prior city council members that when they established the DDA, that they were giving the DDA money because they hadn't had the initial TIF. the difference here is that the DDA couldn't go out and get grants, but Main Street can. Plus, they can also request through community investment. So it's not like we're hanging them out to dry. They have options to get financial support. I just think at this time, our focus should be on our reserve and taking care of what's going on in the city right now. I think Main Street is going to do a great job, and it's going to make them step up their game. So I'm requesting that we defund them completely.
Really, he's talking about a transfer to the CIF thing, so he's defunding under special projects. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it sounded like to me, putting the money in CIF for their discernment of qualification, let's say, as a 501c3.
Correct me again, I don't think you want to put that money in CIF. You want CIF to distribute that money from the funds that they have.
I want to give I guess I'll go back to my initial statement. I'd like to put about, what did I say, 12,000 out of that total amount over to community investment. That would raise it up to, what, 32,000, because it's at 20?
With
that
no
would-
strings attached for CIF to give it to anybody.
That's right.
Okay.
Main Street has to fight for it, just like all the 501c3s do. We don't fund any other 501c3s that I'm aware of. Maybe we do, but it's probably a small portion, but not as much as Main Street. And they've had 3 years and they've got a few grants out there that I believe. It's time to cut the strings.
To put the numbers in perspective, in the special projects budget is where Main Street is found, and that salary and payroll taxes for the coordinator is about 35,000, 32,400. Mike is showing me. The budget, the operational components of Main Street are about 29,200. So if you add all that together, it's about $60,000 that the city supports Main Street, just so we're all understanding the numbers.
So if we eliminate the 64,000, take 12,000 of that, put it in CIF, and let them decide, I would be in concurrence with that. I like that approach.
This actually achieves two goals here, and that's the CIF, which seems to be getting lower and lower every year. I think it's time to start showing appreciation to the 501c's and what they bring to this community. I also think that Main Street can do this on their own.
Suzanne, who at the staff level manages the community investment, just reminded me that we've done the 2018 application process. So, there's always a way to solve the issue. If council wants to increase that budget line by a certain amount, then we can reconsider other applications. There are ways to do this, but we have already received the applications for 2018. It's easy to do it for 2019, but if you wanted to do it something for 2018, we can work with you to figure out a way to do that. Meaning, they could submit an application, you could assess it based on its merits and its merits alone, and award them something within some amount that you would set within the budget.
I guess I didn't realize that this process has already been done. Can't we go back and reevaluate the applications? And
Not done, just we've already received applications.
Can we extend that?
We just said we could. Not
No,
but we could open it up to more applications if we want to.
There's a way to work through this. I don't know that we have to open up the whole application process, but council can always have the opportunity to look at special requests throughout the year for community investment. It's your program. So we do have a process in place, but we've had in the past exceptions to that process. I can remember Cruise Above the Clouds came in one year after the process was done because it was the year that Dennis Gage was coming, and they wanted a little more money to make it a better event because we knew we would get that return with about a geez, I don't know, 150 more cars that year than what we typically had. So even though we've finished accepting applications now, council always has the flexibility to accept applications.
He's on the CIF. I'd like to. And Main Street.
So I have a radical plan. As David has quite well pointed out, it's not 7,000. It's 60-some thousand that we're talking about. So my proposal is to have a decreasing amount of. They have a certain requirement for the city to support them, and I'm going to throw out a radical proposal here. It's actually been talked about amongst some of us in the room. Is that we put Main Street over in the cabin. We give them 40,000 this next year. We give them 20,000 the next year. We give them 10,000 the next year, and that's it. It's not 60-some thousand. It's cutting them off a chunk at a time and getting them going towards independence. I sit on that board. I tried to convince them that they needed more independence. Their budget is going to come in. It's going to be more than, more than 40,000. So it's not going to be much different than before. So I'm suggesting an alternative to help them get their designation is to, and we can revisit this at a later time. So that's my proposal is to give them the cabin, house them over there. The whole goal is to the autonomy with the city. Give them a 40,000. That's just a number. 20,000 next 10. Cut it in half. Keep cutting it in half. Now, on the other aspect of CIF, I sit on that, and I've been a part of that for over a decade. We have Woodland Music Series came in years ago and wanted a supplemental. We do supplementals all the time up here at council. At one point, the CIF said, "Well, let's hold back some money." Years ago, they said, "Let's hold back some money in case something special comes up, like the Dennis Cage situation." They don't necessarily do it because the pot is so small, and we get 40 applications for, here's $100, here's $100 kind of thing. I agree with Neil and Noel that they would be an ideal place to put 501c3 money. You concurred with him, so I conclude. Anyway, I like that approach. The amount of money is problematic for the survival of Main Street. I think they will come back with a very strong presentation. You will be the judge of what you think of that presentation. I am not privy to it yet, but that's my proposal. You heard what I said.
Mike, do we have their budget? You did. I looked at it maybe a month ago or 2 months ago. I'd like council to actually look at their budget and see what they're requesting and what they're requesting the amounts for. I think you'll be interested to see that. Please do. Right. And I don't think we're gonna. Oh, you just have one. I already know what it is. And you already know what it is too. Nice. Put me on the spot. Thank you. Let's see. Income. Yeah, let me go to expenditures. Yeah, I want you to go over and do that. I'm seeing $194,000. I'm kind of wondering where that's coming from.
That's in kind. Maybe this was a mistake. They've listed under what they consider administration general of 53,520. They also have other expenses which they're hoping to create from grants and other opportunities. The total is 74,000, but of the part that we're interested in, it's 53,520.
Thank you. Kenny?
That's 20,000 difference.
Or a part-time.
It includes part-time coordinator, correct. But where that money comes from is up to debate.
Okay. I'm looking forward to the presentation too. I have a little different feeling about this. I don't necessarily disagree with what everybody's saying here, but I need to see and hear some more information because a few meetings ago we had, because of another issue with an employee, a whole lot of people supporting Main Street. A lot of business owners downtown came before us and talked about how valuable it was. Certainly they were relating some of that to the person they apparently were talking about, but Main Street itself was portrayed pretty positive. So I'm weighing that a little bit with what else I'm hearing here, and I guess I need to get more information. I guess we will talk about that more. We're going to get a presentation, but that's where I am right now. I certainly want to save some money, and if there's a place to do that here, it makes sense, but also I want the business community to make sure they're happy with how we end up doing this.
And I agree with Ken. And if I were to look at it holistically, I think that there is some value in the Main Street organization. Talked to a couple of members this week. One project that they initiated that has paid off in terms of security is the fact that they took the lead for the parking space sidewalk walkability study, which from that came a recommendation for hash marks between the parallel connections between the blocks on our downtown area. From that recommendation, Ben was then able to take that to CDOT, and CDOT is going to pay to paint those stripes on those sidewalks. Is that worth $57,000? I don't know. I also know that Main Street does require some support from the city to maintain their status in their designation quest. I'm not certain that I understand exactly how that works yet. I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt of coming to us and convincing us that they need our support. I agree with Val, though. I don't think that the city should fund a part-time position to manage that. I think that is something that liaison to Main Street is our special projects director, and I'd like to include that as part of the reason that we need our special projects department, but I don't think we need to pay another part-time position for Main Street. And I'm not certain exactly how much, you begin to ratchet down on how much we do support them. And I'm not even sure why we should allow them to use the cabin. We don't do that with any of the other 501c3s, but maybe they'll explain that when they do their presentation. But no, I agree with you, Val. I think at a minimum, you start weaning them off the taxpayers' dollars and hope that they have autonomy as a very successful 501c3.
Thank you, Carol. John, you have input on this?
I'd like to say simply that I don't think I know enough at this point to offer judgment. I am out of date on what's going on with Main Street, so I'd like to defer my judgment until I feel educated.
Okay, go ahead. Paul?
I thought you wanted me to talk to it. My position on Main Street is I am open to suggestions for some financial support from the city. I'm hearing different things now, different numbers than I've heard the week before, and different opinions from the opinions I've heard from a month ago. I am looking forward to hearing their presentation so I can better understand my position and how to support them.
I know there was a Main Street board meeting, I think either today or yesterday. Was there discussion, I think it's germane this afternoon, Val, particularly before you take off, was there a discussion about the coordinator and that position and pay and near-term future or near-term opportunities?
Thank you, David. There was clarification in the meeting about the role of the coordinator vis-a-vis Main Street only, period. There was a decided there was decision made to make it about Main Street only and not with whatever else. So, and it's an it was a defining role per the bylaws. It had nothing to do with anything else. I believe you received a transfer request. You were supposed to, anyway. A part of the board meeting was a transfer request per an email that you'd sent to the board. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, those are the only things we spoke to. We didn't really go further than just, we had, tunnel vision on just Main Street definition, period.
So is the coordinator still not involved with Main Street operational?
The coordinator is, the Main Street coordinator is a functionary of Main Street.
Under the
city's Main Street coordinator is different than the Main Street's coordinator.
But it's the same person.
Well, I understand.
I think the question is there an intent for the Main Street board to pay a coordinator while the city is simultaneously paying that same person?
I can give you a sense of the board. I can't give you a vote.
Okay.
The sense is in future, yes.
Okay. Oh, so that there would be double payment?
No.
They would
in
just...
the future, yes, independent payment.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
That's a sense of the board. It's not anything. Yes, Bob Carlson is the chairman of the board of Main Street, and Stephanie Alfieri is the treasurer. So those will be, and Renee Bunting is the secretary. So those will all be the officers involved in whatever happens with things in the future.
Okay, it sounds like, and again, let me know if this is not correct. We want to wait and make a decision until after we hear a presentation on November 16th. So that said, Mr. Buttery, we'll leave the Main Street where it is relative to the budget right now. Are we in agreement with that? Good. We'll move on to special projects, and Paul, I'll start with you.
My position on special projects is eliminate the department. Eliminate this department. That's my position.
I agree with Paul. I agree with Paul. All right, Ken?
I'm not sure. We had quite a list of things that department, that group does, that person does.
Ken? Thanks. Just closer.
And as staff recommendation said, that the task list would be the same, and we'd be moving it to another area in the city. So it's still, those things need to get done. So in some way, there's still some cost and some time involved to get them done. Somebody has to do it, so it's going to take away from something else. So I'm a little confused about that. We can eliminate this, but I'm not sure we're eliminating everything we really want to, because some of these things need to get done and will get done. But by who and at what additional cost, if any?
Well, and also, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, special projects includes Main Street. So to say we support eliminating the whole department, kind of overlap in there a little bit, yes or no?
The director of special projects was the administrative supervisor for the Main Street coordinator, and so that relationship existed. If Main Street goes away, then that supervisory role for the special projects director goes away. Does that answer your question? Yes. But a further point, when you say eliminate the department, does that mean eliminate the funding of a position? Because one of the things we talked about was that department going away, but that function residing in the city manager's office as a direct report to the city manager. So I've heard three people say eliminate the department. What I really need to understand is, are you eliminating the departmental structure, or are you eliminating the funding for the position for that function?
Yeah, that was my next point, was eliminating departments only part, we're really discussing budget issues. So there's some nuances here. There's Main Street under there, there's 2 positions under there, there's extraneous expenses too that aren't associated with just Main Street, they're associated with other things. There's also the visitor center contract with the chamber. So to David's point, we need clarification on what we're talking about. Getting rid of the department as a title is one thing. The funding aspect, which is what Mike and David have to look at, is a whole other thing. So I would ask that people. I have a proposal, but I would ask that people understand that getting rid of the department is just a title change. I think if it's not, then we need to understand, maybe we need to go back around and understand that. So I was challenged on this in the last meeting. I made the statement that Main Street does a lot of these things. I'm creating a table. I wasn't prepared today to put the table up. I'm about halfway through creating that table about special projects and Main Street and blah, blah, blah. One of the proposals that's been out there, I'll just put it out on the table since nobody else is going to do it, is to bring the special projects personnel at this time under the direct supervision of city administration. Many of us think that halftime is all that job would be if you get rid of all these other extraneous things going on there. That doesn't take care of the $37,000. You know, there's a bunch of other expenses. I think we need more clarification on, right? I mean, that's what you guys need over there, right? The direction on what that means when you say eliminate the department.
Instead of saying that, if we, the number right now I'm looking at is $229,000 or so. Is that correct?
If you remove the visitor center contract, is that what you just did?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Okay. I think our concern, and again, if I'm wrong, we think that that's too much money. If we give you a target number, can you come back and say, this is what we can do if we say, let's make that $75,000, and here's what we can do under the city manager's auspices, instead of having a SPO director, if you will. If we give you a number, a target to reach, and you can tell us what can be included, what can be accomplished for that number, is that a reasonable approach? Knowing that we unanimously, I think that $229,000 is too much.
Well, of the $229,000 that you just mentioned, well, let's start at the beginning. The budget in special projects was $271,700. If you remove the visitor center $42,800, that takes you down to about $230. Depending on what you decide to do with Main Street, that could take you down to $170. Again, depending on what you do with Main Street. So the $170 funds the person and all the encumbrances associated with it, some office supplies, etc., marketing and advertising, business recruitment and retention. Those are really the only two operational costs. Those are about $58,000, $59,000. So other than personnel, the reason that person exists is to not only coordinate all those different things that were on the sheets, but to coordinate the expenses associated with that. So in my mind, your real starting number is the 171, not the 229, if you follow how I got there. That, again, that order of magnitude. So that's where the discussion should start. Staff always appreciates a target to shoot at. If we don't have a target, we're guaranteed to miss it. So if you give us that opportunity, then we have a chance to have that discussion internally, see what the value is that we can accomplish with reduced hours.
So then I would like to propose this. Val, for the $40,000 for Main Street, I personally think it's too much. If we take $20,000 in that money and we take the $58,000 that David just talked about, I would be willing to to make that target $80,000, that would include Main Street and special projects, and that saves us about $145,000 or so. Anybody agree or disagree, or what are your thoughts?
I need clarification.
Okay.
On your numbers, if you don't mind. I understand how you got to the 20,000 for Main Street. You took the 30,000 that was the coordinator plus the payroll taxes plus the 22,000 and 7,000, and you brought that down to 20,000. The 37,000 and the 21,500 were for the O&M components of special projects. So in that number, that 20, which would go to Main Street, so now you're only talking the 37,000 plus 21,500 for the entire special projects operation, both the person and the activities.
That's correct.
Yeah, I do have a comment. Some of the functions that, by giving them that cap, are going to be transferred somewhere else on the staff. If that can be demonstrated to me, that those have been transferred, and then again it becomes budget neutral. So are you simply talking about a cap on a salary for a position, or are you talking about these other expenses that are going to end up being transferred somewhere else?
Yes. The whole purpose of the savings was to put it towards the reserve fund.
But I would argue that some amount of those functions are going to have to be transferred somewhere else.
Main Street, DDA,
no,
Visitor
not
Center,
at all.
Chamber of Commerce.
No, these are
I can
other
continue.
functions. These are other functions that will have to be performed by someone else on the staff. Not all of them, but some of them will.
Right. No,
Marketing.
that's fine, and that's kind of the way it works. When you eliminate, we're not eliminating the position.
Yeah, we're not eliminating a position, but
We might be reducing it, but
some of these functions will have to transfer to some other staff.
or reduce the criteria, or reduce the amount of workload for that individual.
In my mind, it's less about the workload. It's less about the workload. And Carol, don't let me put words in your mouth. When you say functions, I think of activity, people doing something.
Yes,
But I
yes.
think what's the real issue here is that there are things that get accomplished that cost money. So marketing, there's a dollar value associated with marketing. That function, theoretically, could be transferred to someone else. And there's no cost difference there because the person is getting their salary. But the function of the marketing, the cost of the marketing, is still a cost.
Correct, and that's,
Okay.
yeah, those were exactly the words I had in my mouth. Thank you very much. And then, by simply calling this position, where you have a full-time employee, something else, what savings is there in doing that? I don't know if there's an answer to that. I just think your number is a little low, Neil, but if our guidance is eliminate a department which has some overhead, transfer some of those activities to other staff sections, but retain the employee under the direct supervision of the city manager, I agree with you. I just don't know what that number is, but I would rather give him the guidance to say, here's another way to approach something that is important to the community, but maybe not particularly when you add on the Main Street expenses of that particular department.
And my response would be, if we give him a target, he can come back to us and say, this is what we can do for that target, and then we can decide if we need to add or subtract from that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Repeat the target again.
Anybody know what I said?
Yeah, it was 58,500 with the assumption. Well, initially you said 80,000, but 20 of that was to go to Main Street, leaving for the entire special projects, people and expenses and all that stuff, 58,500.
So a total of about 80,000?
But with 20 of that, you you said
2011
earmarked to
Main.
Main Street. So I took it off the top, and so the SPO budget that you want us to shoot for is 58,500. People, stuff, activities, marketing, everything.
Love it.
So if we're concerned about savings, and I know I used the big word efficiency last year. I understand that will curtail a little efficiency there. What would our fund balance after if we decide to save with Main Street, we decide to save with special projects? Where are we at with fund balance?
Well, you would take 60,000 that we said would be saved from Main Street, and okay, just one second. 271, 700 minus the 42,800. That would take us to about 230. We're going to save 60 there. It gets us to the 170 that I mentioned before. You've allowed about 60, so that would add about 100 to 110,000 to the general fund reserve.
Okay, so there were some new reserve fund numbers recently.
Minor changes upward.
Okay.
That was I think it was 3,500 for fuel.
So where would we be then? Well, just for the record.
For the actual number,
Yeah, if the actual number plus that number, where would we be?
it was it'd be about 100. So it was plus the 379.
480. So we're real close to 500. This is good.
Subtract off you got to subtract that about 56,000. So you're adding about with the things you've talked about right now so far. You're adding about 50,000 to the fund balance, which would get at 380, about 430.
Right, and my goal from the last budget meeting was to find savings and then put them where they need to be. So I feel like we're on the right track.
So are you comfortable with that number and trying to shoot for it and go from there? It's a starting point.
I understand the number,
Okay.
and we will work towards it from a staff perspective.
You didn't say you were comfortable with it.
I can't tell you whether I'm comfortable or uncomfortable because I haven't done the work yet.
So,
No, I think what I've already acknowledged is that if that function exists in any way, shape, or form, it will fall under the city administration, meaning the city manager, as a direct report.
so I'm not comfortable with that number. I'm absolutely comfortable with the principle that you laid out there. Give them a target and go for it. As I mentioned, I threw out the number of 40,000, which is a whole bunch less than 60 some, and it's a whole bunch less than 53,000. In trimming it back, 20,000 doesn't even cover their expenses. It doesn't even, well, it certainly doesn't cover any salaries, which is somebody's problem. Maybe we don't think it's ours.
You're speaking of Main Street,
Main,
then.
Main Street, the 20 throughout. I think the 20,000 is problematic. I think the other number, because we haven't defined the Main Street number yet, would be the target I would suggest that we look at.
And I would agree because we just don't have the Main Street presentation. Once we have the Main Street presentation, plus what we're giving David for a target, then we can make a better decision.
So you'd agree that, forget about whether it's 80 or something, the 60 was the leftover part that's never mind Main Street, right? Is that,
Yeah, let's shoot.
That's what I heard.
okay. Yes, I vote yes.
November 16th at the next council meeting.
Next council meeting.
Right, it'll be before the initial posting.
Okay, anything else on special projects? If not, we'll move forward again on this list. I hope I'm heading in a good direction. Val, it's almost 25 after 4. What's your schedule?
I'm dressed, and I'm going to be picked up by my wife when she walks in the door. I'm to stride out of here.
Okay.
So I'm going to stay as long as I can.
Great, and I know you have a list. My thought was, if everybody agrees, we've got a couple other things that we've discussed. I'd like to get all those, some consensus, and then Val, for our next meeting, my goal would be to go through your 12 or 13 and Burke at the November 14th work session. Does that make sense for everybody? say
We-
November 14th.
What council
correct?
agreed to do was do the VERC at November 16th. We can adjust. We've published the agenda? Okay. If the council feels like we can get through the other parts of the agenda and do VERC on the 14th, when you leave today, and Val, I've got copies for you, the staff response to the VERC report. Yours is right here, and we'll hand those out to everybody today, so you'll have at least a week to review it.
Yeah, I want to change that. I want to discuss VERC at November 14th. We may have some ongoing discussion that we can't accomplish, but I think the sooner we have these discussions, the better. We're going to meet November 14th anyway, so why not?
Yeah, I was deferring to John's attendance.
Understand.
Yeah.
But look at him. He's in the best of health.
So 6 p.m. on November 14th, we'll schedule another work session, please, Suzanne.
And we'll include VERC in that.
Would you like that to be the to start that? Because that'll fill a night, I think.
And it could. We'll try to accomplish, because we have the 15th set aside also. What we'll try to accomplish is Val's last 10 or 12 comments and VERC. But we'll start with VERC.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right here.
Is that acceptable to everybody? Just in terms of scheduling? Well, we'll do it whatever you want, but we'll have them both on the agenda. We'll do. Well, and, honestly, we could take a vote on VERC to start the meeting, see where we're at, and that might end up the entire discussion one way or the other. And then we can move on to the other things. So, I'm glad we have that scheduled, and so, Val, at least you're not gonna miss too much tonight. We're gonna move on to IT staff. I know Val and Noel have different opinions on this, so I'm gonna start with the two of you, please.
The IT staff, I've been asking for this for 3 years now. I believe it's a necessity. It's not a want. It is a need. It is a serious need. We are behind the times with this. I believe this is a starting point. I believe once we get this employee in here and they start to look around and point out things that we need to improve our IT, I don't even know how to say it. I just see, situation. Thank you. I see so many possibilities with an IT. I'm just going to say department, Dave. I know it's not a department; it's an individual, but I just feel more comfortable saying department. I believe they can do the cameras. I believe they can do the website. I believe they can assist with emails. They can assist with the network. They can assist with the audio system, the camera system. There's so many things that they can deal with. The TVs. There's just anything that's electronic they can deal with. And they're here on site. And I know that is very important. And I keep going back to the time that I worked at the Kilo radio station. I was a consultant. I was there 3 days a week. The reason they let me go after 3 years because they needed someone there full time. They needed someone on the spot when the radio station went down. It was actually Kilo and RXP. There were two radio stations that were coming off the same systems. So I understand the need for this. And I'm willing, I truly think I would pay more for someone to be here 12 hours a day. And they will be. Even though they're scheduled for 8, they'll be here more. So I'm not sure what the argument is here. This is something that needs to be done.
I just have a question before you go, Val. What do we have in the budget for IT?
The for personnel or the whole?
Is this $30,000 per year that we're talking about here? Is it reflected in the budget right now?
It's not $30,000 per year. The staffing for an IT person is indeed in the budget.
Okay.
And it's
What's that number?
I think fully encumbered is 66,400. I think in the budget we had 66,900, but we've had a small reduction in benefit costs,
And,
and that's fully encumbered.
great, just so I understand, you're good with that, Noel? That's a full-time
It would be
IT desk person.
correct.
I'd hire two.
But you would
I mean,
start
I
with
know
one, right?
how difficult it is and how stressful it can be when your network goes down or you can't get emails, or and especially in a business environment, it's critical. And the stress level of the employee that needs that information actually grows too. So now you're coming in as an IT person, you're dealing with a stressful person, you don't know what the problem is, so it just escalates the situation. And so hopefully having an IT person that knows what they're doing coming into a situation calm, knowing how to deal with the problem on the computer, keeps the stress level of that employee down. And I'm sure everyone here in the room has been there, and some of my clients have been there, right? Okay.
Is that like losing your phone?
Oh, it's yeah.
Val, give us the downside to that.
I published a big expose, one-page description of why I think this is at best a half-time position. I absolutely accept the concept of the IT department, and I support that. I have for quite some time. We have asked. There's two problems I see. One is that we're going into our overtime extension past the basic contract, which is an extraordinary rate, not extraordinary, but it's a much higher rate of $100 per hour. I start to ask my questions as an IT professional of 4,000 stations at one point in my career. In other words, I know this is my wheelhouse. Absolutely my wheelhouse. I have to start asking, why are we going into that? Do we have bad hardware? Do we have bad software? Do we have bad network? Whatever. A lot of the things are handled by the ISP. A lot of the things should be handled outside of the buildings, let's say. And so I start to wonder why we're going into those. And we have very competent people in the city staff. I don't think it's a cockpit problem, which is what we used to call it in the military. It's not a cockpit problem. It's got to be something else, because we don't have idiots here in the staff. We've got good, smart people. So I start to ask myself, why are we going into that? If we're having so much trouble that we're going into all this IT overload, then something's wrong. Is it a training problem? Whatever. And certain types of things, we've got situations with accounting systems I'm very well aware of that they are IT, but they're not really IT. They're other kinds of problems. So just basically from an IT standpoint, I'm really, really troubled at having a full-time person doing this. I've done the math. Everybody can read it. It's public. We published it with our last council meeting. And because of my extraordinary background in this environment, I mean extraordinary, with huge corporation, 4,000 stations I will read, and 3 networks and 3 separate computer data centers. I have to wonder how we can justify. So my question was originally, if we're having such a problem going forward on this, can we get out of the contract? Some of this has been answered, some of it has not. I've asked for an executive session with the city attorney if the council wants to find out if we can get out of it, and what kind of impact mechanism. Mike and David, they have direct knowledge of the contracts and things like that. I'm very, very upset and dismayed at that we don't have a performance clause in this contract. There's other contracts that have performance clauses either. So I believe in the department, absolutely. I'm just troubled that if it takes a full-time person, something's wrong. That's what I'm saying.
Great, thanks. Let's let the city manager, Mike, answer those questions. And one of them is in regard to peak internet and how So Val,
And talking to other experts that I know that have been in the IT business for a long time, they said more like Noel said, probably need 2 people. One's not enough, but you know what? If you're just starting out, at least start with one.
so I've got one that says one's not enough and one that's saying one is too much. Val, would you agree with this? If we could get somewhere close to a 1-to-1 trade-off.
I was about to say, as closer we can get to budget neutral is my complaint here. And if we're really stretching into that overtime, there just got to be an IT problem. You know, that's all. But so the closer to budget neutral, I'm not talking about that.
I won't disagree with, you know, the technology that we have, the age of it. You know, that is something that could be looked at, and that's where I think we also need somebody in-house to help us figure that out. Another thing is, Peak is going to increase their rates if we stay with them under the contract support. They've already talked to us about increasing their rates, and it's a significant increase.
Is that in 2021 or before?
No, that's now.
That's now.
The contract allows them to give us a price increase, and we have the right then to either terminate the contract at that point, or live with their price increase. My estimate of that price increase would cost about $111,000. And that's an estimate. That's based on discussions we've had. But I'm just saying that because you're not out of position. Peak is going to raise their rates.
When are we having these discussions? I'm sorry, excuse me. The discussions are,
Ongoing.
thank you.
But the person that we would hire will help us go into the future. Peak would still be a partner and would help us make that transition. It's not a threat about the rates raising. It's just the fact of the contract. Many contracts have the ability to be increased, but what we want to do is have that in-house person that can help us with the capital replacement, with the daily maintenance. And yes, we do have smart people, but since we've automated a lot of things, everything from our SCADA for the water treatment plant to our issues with financial management to everything. Everything is automated, and it's increased drastically even over the last 5 years. So we believe that one person can help us get back on track. It's pretty close to budget neutral as it is, and we will continue to work to make it as close to budget neutral as we possibly can.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I would ask that we talk to Erin in an executive session if the rest of council agrees and see what she thinks about the contract and the interesting parts of it that we can't talk about in public.
If we could, let your staff do a little bit of work first to avoid that extra cost, and let's let her review that. We're looking at it too. So let us look at those options if we could, please, before we encumber that effort.
And my approach, Val, would be, tell me what's wrong with this. We're starting something new of a new IT person. This is a discussion for maybe next year's budget. We can see how the IT person's working. If we feel like, hey, Val was right, this guy's sitting around doing nothing, or Noel's right, hey, we need more help in this regard. But after we have some history, right, we'll have a little bit better idea.
Yeah, agreed. And all my stuff goes on an extreme resume on this stuff, but it's going to be a practical experience, so I agree.
Good, thank you.
I want to read my statement on the IT staff. I have a clear understanding of the city's contract with Peak Internet. Now, I don't quite have a clear understanding of the contract that the city has with Peak Internet. I want to touch on a couple of points. For $30,000 per year until 2021, they provide the city with 35 hours per month of desk service, and that this is not enough time, and approximately $32,000 additional dollars are needed per year to complete necessary work. I understand we'll need another $8,000 on top of that. I support hiring an IT person. I also request a 6-month report on savings or efficiencies of of adding this position. But now I have to ask to clear up what I've just heard. Did I hear that peak internet will increase our speeds and take that $32,000 in addition, and that our contract will go from $30,000 per year to $62,000 per year, and that we would then hire an IT person? And is that the situation, or did I misunderstand something?
So, like you said, right now, for their services, their customer support, it's $30,000 per year. We've been discussing with Peak Internet about if we're able to add a staff person that can do a lot of that customer support that they already do, that Peak is doing, for only less than 0.2 FTE. We've been discussing moving that $30,000. It's still going to be a part of the contract, but it won't be for customer support. It'll move to a different area of the contract. For example, improving infrastructure. The 30,000. Customer support.
The problem comes in with our IT person if they understand the backbone, how we've been building and understand the networking, to be able to work on that network without support from the internet and their professionals. Are we putting enough side of money for a person who's capable of doing that and understanding this record? I ask. I'm only throwing it out and interview a person who works that they understand the network and stay away from Peak's charges. That will increase our money. I understand the situation.
Paul, I guess it's very simple. You have the WAN, which is Peak Internet, and then you have the LAN, which is internal to the building. The IT guy will support the LAN, not the pipe of water coming into the building. We'll just keep it simple.
There will.
Who's in charge of that pipe of water coming into the building to get the problem? Does that fall under the contract that has Peak's problem?
Right, that's their network. Yes, that is their issue, not so. But if you said 10 meg, and you're correct, that's like a dirt road for internet speed. That's crazy.
I'm pleased that you're looking into options there and changing the character of that compensation. I think that's a real smart move. I'm glad this is the first time I've heard of it. I'm very pleased. Thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to move on. I want to finish this by 5 o'clock. We've got a couple of things that I want to consider. And the first one is the Cultural Center.
Do we
I'm sorry?
have, because Mike, remember, is going to be plugging numbers into the budget, so it sounds to me as if we're okay with keeping the IT person in the budget as presented.
I'm sorry, is that consensus? We good with that? Val?
Yes.
Yes, I'm okay with that, especially with how it was presented tonight, and that we monitor that next year and see if this second person is indeed needed.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, John.
We're good.
I would ask before I escape out of here to, can we get a kind of a summary of what we think we said? From
happy to
from
review it,
staff?
Mayor, if that's
well,
okay.
I mean later on, not this second. After we're done.
Of course.
In other words, an email or something.
Of course.
Thank you.
Anything else on IT? Paul, why don't you start with your Cultural Center comment?
Mayor, my expert on the Cultural Center person is in a Park and Rec Advisory Board. Suzanne, would you go ask her to join us for just a couple of minutes?
Then we can, while we wait, unless there's anything else from anybody, I've got one last thing on Paul's list. Since we're going to wait on the VERC, Paul, till next time, why don't you just go to your item number 9?
Yes, sir.
Street projects, I strongly disagree with the city's approach to street projects. You do not approve major projects without a complete design and competitive bids from 3 qualified contracts. It is not proper to pass just a dollar amount as a councilman. I have to ask, where is the fiduciary responsibility in that? I do not believe that I have to pass something before I can find out what is in it. In my professional opinion, that is not the right way to do business.
David, you want to respond to that?
Thank you. For this particular budget year, the project that we have on South Park Street and that goes up to Dual as well the design was approved by a previous council, so we do have that design. We have an engineer's estimate associated with that design. That request is included in the 410 budget. All the other projects are relatively small that we can do a design and construction all in one season as opposed to doing them in 2 seasons. Council approves every contract, so what we've done is an in-house engineer's estimate on both design and construction, and that's what we've placed into the budget for everything other than Park Street. Forget Park Street. All the other projects, we have done our own in-house, and that's what we put into the budget. When you approve the budget, then we will go to designers and get bids for the design, and then once we get the design done, then we'll get bids from the contractors. I realize that I understand your point about fiduciary responsibility. You still get to approve every single contract, and so you still have a check on that. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we can accomplish those projects in a 1-year period, both design and construction in one construction season, and the process that we have before you that we have used in the past has allowed us to do that. The point I want to make is you still get a chance to look at every single contract. You get a chance to see what the bids were. So it is a responsible way to do this to make sure that we get the work done in a timely fashion.
Does that answer your question, Paul?
I still do not believe it is appropriate to bid on the dollar amount and not have a complete design and 3 competitive bids on that design. I do not wish to tilt my hand to a contractor as to how much I'm willing to pay for a project. I am not willing to approve a project without understanding the design so that I can understand the aspects of the design. I do not want to micromanage the city manager or these projects, and I am not micromanaging them by asking for a complete design and 3 competitive bids for a project. You can pay for you can bid out your design, do your design. The designs are good. The designs could be understood, and we could move forward with the bidding process.
I understand that process completely. But what you're suggesting, I think, would be a 2-year process, a 2 budget year process, and it doesn't allow us to complete some of those smaller projects in a more timely fashion. And again, you approve a budget but then you get to approve also the expenditure associated with that because you look at contracts. So we're being extremely responsible from a fiduciary perspective, but we're also completing these projects in half the time.
Then I suggest we have a 5-year plan with projects in advance so we can understand the projects, understand the design, and go through the bidding process so we don't have to break it up into 2 years. I understand your position and what you're telling me. This is my belief. This is how I feel. I do not want to delay projects and drive up costs. I want to know what the projects are, be responsible in my fiduciary position, and fulfill my responsibilities as a councilman to this city, to the voters who put me in what I think is a responsible way of doing it. So if we can accomplish this year, I highly recommend that you have a 5-year plan and that you follow a design, complete, and go for 3 competitive bids.
Paul, let me ask you this. You're in the business. If I get a bid today for 3 years from now, how well does that hold up? You know,
Not getting a bid today for 3 years from now. You get a bid 3 years from now from a project that you put on schedule and you understand it's coming up in 3 years, just like you do with your chip seal.
understand.
And,
Okay,
and we
thank
are
you.
going to work, we're moving towards a 5-year plan. We have the stormwater master plan, we have the pavement management plan. It helps us define what those out years look like. We're going to formalize that into the future, but I would ask the council to allow us to complete these projects that we've put before you, because we think they keep us moving forward and making progress for our community.
And I was asked if I had an opinion and could look at the plans and understand the plans and make an opinion, that would be my opinion. Look ahead 5 years like you do on other things, so that you know the projects that are coming up and you won't fall into these problems like we have today.
Sounds like we're heading in that direction.
I hope so.
The pavement plan, though, the pavement plan that is in place now that did project out for 5 years ends this year, and included in the budget this year is the cost of a new plan.
In the
correct?
2018 budget, we have requested funding for the pavement management plan. We know what we want to accomplish in 2018, so doing the plan will get us started in 2019 to follow that plan. But let me, if I could, because I know Cindy has just stepped in from her park board. The question, Cindy, we're going to have a discussion now about the part-time position in the cultural center, and you are more familiar with anybody. So, Mayor, if we could now ask the question so that Cindy and I and Mike can help answer those.
Okay, great. Then let's start with Paul, number 7 on Paul's list.
Cultural Center, I support eliminating the part-time maintenance position at the Cultural Center.
So Cindy, if you will come forward and just give us some sense of what the part-time maintenance position does, how long, your sense of value. Just give us a little input so we can make a good decision.
Yes, the part-time position is a 20-hour position. The person that fills that is really the assistant to the facility manager. The position helps with the day-to-day operations and maintenance of the building. They help set up and clean up for events. They do basic sound setup and lighting for programming. They assist renters during events and with their events. They do conduct bartending for these events. They, in general, help with the cleaning and painting and day-to-day repair work. Let's see, and just the general maintenance, the custodial work that's necessary, restocking for the restrooms, mopping the floors, taking care of the restrooms, such as, the dirty job of plunging toilets that none of us like to do. And this is typically takes place on the weekends and sometimes during the week at night.
Thank you. I'm going to take a page out of Val's book here. I do a lot of work at the Cultural Center and have for a number of years, and worked with Chad, who's in this position now, for a long time. I cannot imagine running the Cultural Center as well as we do and offering the customer service that we do without that part-time person. So I would be in absolute disagreement with Councilman Saunier in this regard.
I got to run, but if I could just throw my 2 cents worth in. Debbie does almost all of those things, and she's the sound pro over there. So
understand there's a lot of events at night.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not married to this, especially. I think it's a good place to look at saving some money. Debbie's not a bump on a log. She's very active over there, and she does a lot of this stuff already, more than Chad does. So my instinct from being around Debbie is that she could easily handle everything and more. She's quite capable individual, and that's why I threw this in as an idea to save some money. But I have to run. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Don't be sorry. Thanks for being here. See you on the 14th. Anyone else want to weigh in on Cultural Center?
I would just support council's position. I too have been involved for many, many years in things going on at the Cultural Center and events, both day and night. And I know what Chad does there, and the staff deals with it all the time, so they have a real face-to-face understanding of what is going on there actually. So I support that 100%.
Carol?
I do too, only because I don't know what requirements are there for that individual. But if someone who is in the know tells me that that is an important position, then in this case, I'm going to take it at face value.
Well, let me tell you something that we all know for sure. We are facing increased competition at the Cultural Center. There's a few new venues, not the least of which is the golf course. And for us to provide the best possible customer service, I think includes this part-time decision. And if you think about it relative to revenue stream, 1 or 2 events could possibly pay for, for a part-time employee for a month or 2. I don't know the size of them, but I know they're numerous. I know he works hard. I know he's done a great job, and so that's my argument.
You stole my question. I agree. We need this position. I believe the events cover the salary there. So, and $22,000 a year for an individual is, that is definitely a quarter-time job. It's not even a part-time job. So I see no problem with keeping that.
I take no offense. I now have more information as to Chad, now have a face to it, how you feel about it. So, by all means, I take no offense. I needed the information.
Thank you very much. Council, that's all I've got for tonight. Unless you want to discuss anything else, we'll meet November 14th at 6 o'clock in this room, and we'll discuss VERC and the rest of Val's questions. Appreciate everybody's time tonight and their input. And what am I missing? I would love to. I'm sorry, nobody raised their hand, but you know me, I want comments all the time. Would you please? I thought you might have something to say, but how did I forget about you? We love that.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. I appreciate it.
Stand right up here, Kelly, where we can see.
Absolutely. I made some notes, so bear with me a second. I just want to say that I think it's very wise of you to support Miles' request for unfreezing the position. The communities around us and ours are seeing more activity that demand more of their time, and overtime has always been a challenge in the police department. So that's a great idea, but I just want to, and as the discussion went on, I see some addressing of balancing that increased expense. I just would like to suggest that in times of cutting expenses, looking at your capital expenditures is a really good place to start. And I see vehicle replacements in general capital, Department 116 in the general fund, several replacements of vehicles, and some things with building and facility defense and things like that. With the vehicles, unfortunately, a good program that worked for years has kind of gone away because of the status of the fund balance. We had used a $1,000 reserve for the revolving loan fund for internal financing of vehicle replacements. It worked quite well with a repayment that mirrored depreciation or the life of that asset. I would hope that maybe that would be a place that you look for some savings. See if all those vehicles could wait, or some of them could wait, those capital expenses. That would be a good place. There's $138,000 there. Glad to see that you're thinking about community investment. I volunteer for a number of nonprofits in the city and have for years, and they really depend on that help. They've adjusted to the cuts that we have seen from what it used to be, and I think that I just would hate for them to suffer because they play an important role. Comment on special projects. Looking through the list, I see a lot of things that have happened, and a lot of celebrations that occurred for capital projects, the park, the pool, things like that, that are done, and they're on board, and I see some things that are one time in the listings, and I just encourage you that to find those efficiencies. This is business. This is not personal. This isn't about people. This is about finding efficiencies and doing things the best way we can. And then I know we didn't finish the comment or the discussion on the street projects, and Mr. Saunier's comment about the budgeting of a number that may or may not be a good number. And I just remind you that you always have the tool of your supplemental appropriation to fund, and Mike even mentioned in the last work session that we don't budget for grants till we receive the award, and then we appropriate through supplemental. You always have that option for capital as well. So if you get to a position where Mr. Saunier and some of you others are comfortable and it's ready to move forward, then the staff, with their contract they bring to you to approve, can ask for the appropriation of the monies at that time. So if it might be a solution or compromise to get you all on the same page there. And that's available it's a really good practice for capital projects, for grants, those kinds of things. Personnel, operations, not so much. Those really shouldn't show up in supplemental unless something huge changes or opportunities come. And you all know how I feel about giving raises when you are in a financial condition that you're in. I won't reiterate that. That's all I have right now. I think the discussions were very good tonight, and thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
Kelly, thank you. The unfreezing the position, that's a no-brainer. I'm so glad council wants us to move forward with that. The program Kelly spoke to was the revolving loan fund that many of you remember. We did away with that not because of the low fund balance, but because we figured that at the end of the day, we still pay cash for them and just reimburse the others, and it was still the same money out. The funds just paid themselves. It made it simpler for the council to understand that, and it was still the amount of money going out. Yeah, capital expenditures, vehicles are expensive. Every single one that we're requesting this year, based on our capital replacement plan, was due to be replaced last year. So all the ones that were scheduled for 2018, we've not included. So we're a year behind on those. We'll have that discussion when we talk about the vehicles, but know that we've already delayed 1 year for those 5 different vehicles. The community investment, she's right, it's definitely gone down over the years, and per the resolution that was passed for the last 3 years, community investment should have been 0. So staff has recommended above 0 because we do value all those things that these different groups do. We absolutely do. As far as special project goes, council's given me a target. Let me see what I can do associated with that. The idea of supplemental appropriations for street projects or any capital projects, absolutely. Absolutely, you have the right to do that, and we've used that in the past. We did that with the Aquatic Center. We use that process, so that's a really good way to do that.
And I like what Kelly said about, the grant fund and things like street projects, capital investment. That makes sense for appropriation. I would like to see the best we can. I know, Mike, you want that too. That we limit that the best we can, and clearly things come up during the year. But the capital projects and the grants can't really be accommodated before they actually happen. So I appreciate that, and Kelly, I appreciate your comments. Suze, who else did I forget? Anyone else? Jan, anyone else here want to comment before we dismiss? I appreciate council and your discussion tonight, and see you November 14th. And everybody have a great night. Thank you.